We'll go with a new plan emerging from Republican lawmakers. Next on up front, the bill's author, Republican Senator Leah Vukmir of Wauwatosa, plus DPI Superintendent Tony Evers on his call for parents to oppose the bill. Then voter ID goes before the state Supreme Court. Is this issue a wild card in the November election? Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Gousha. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. Who should write academic standards for Wisconsin school children? We're talking today about the controversy over Common Core and a new move in the legislature to override it. Wisconsin adopted the National Common Core educational standards back in 2010, but they've become very controversial, and now some Republican lawmakers want to go a different route. They're backing a bill to create a model academic standards board. It would be made up of 15 appointees from the governor, the State Department of Public Instruction, and legislative leaders. The governor would pick a co-chair and 5 members. DPI would pick a co-chair and 4 members. The board would develop standards for math, English, science, and social studies. The standards would have a public hearing and be reviewed by DPI and the legislative committee. The Senate Education Committee will hold a hearing on the bill Thursday of this week, and we are talking now with the author of the legislation, Republican Senator Leah Vukmir of Wauwatosa. Senator, it's good to have you back on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, let me get your assessment of the chances of this bill becoming law and the chance that the state may move away from Common Core.
Well, I think the chances are very good. We have a hearing on Thursday, and I welcome the opportunity for people to come forward and tell what their concerns are with Common Core and what their concerns are with the bill. We had hearings around the state to get the input from individuals about Common Core, and I think I will be hearing a lot of those same concerns that I heard as we traveled the state.
Specifically, what are your concerns about what's being taught in terms of math, in terms of English, social studies? What is it that bothers you?
Well, in general, I think we in Wisconsin believe we can do better. And the Common Core that we heard is that the Common Core standards aren't rigorous enough and that they aren't internationally benchmarked. We think that we should have our own set of Wisconsin-based standards that are rigorous, that are world-class, and will set Wisconsinites and Wisconsin students on the right path towards success.
So it's really a matter of you don't think they're rigorous enough. I've seen some people who are educational scholars, one, for example, with the Fordham Institute, which is a right-of-center think tank, say, these standards are much more rigorous, this is much more cohesive than it is in many states, but you think Wisconsin is different.
I think that we can do better than Common Core, and we heard from experts as well, math and English experts that attended the hearings, and 2 individuals in particular who were part of the validation committee for the Common Core standards, and they felt that in many ways the standards were not rigorous enough. They weren't developmentally appropriate, meaning that material was being taught at ages that weren't appropriate for the students' intellectual and cognitive ability. And so that was a concern. So that's one part, the content aspect of the standards. The other is a process issue, and I believe, along with the other authors of this bill, is that this Common Core was foisted on us as a state without any input from the public and without any input or oversight by the legislature. And that's what's great about this bill, and why I believe it's a very fair approach to look at standards from the perspective of creating them, having legislative and public input through the hearing process.
Why is it a good thing to have legislative oversight for education standards? Why should politics be a part, ultimately, of making decisions about what our kids learn?
Well, it's kind of hard to get politics out of everything, and if the state is indeed, paying for education, then obviously these decisions, many decisions are made in Madison. But this bill doesn't put legislators in the driver's seat of writing the standards, and I want to make that very clear. There's a lot of misinformation that's been out there that the legislature is going to be writing the standards. Nothing could be further from the truth. And if you look at the makeup, and you've described it very well, there are no legislators on this, but there should be some oversight given the magnitude of an issue educating our children.
I want to follow up on that, because the legislature would, though, ultimately have the final authority on this, would they not? I mean, if the DPI superintendent, Tony Evers, came back and said, we've looked at this, we'd like to make some changes, we're not sure we're on board with all of this, the legislature could ultimately say, you know what, we don't disagree with you, and we're going to go this direction. Isn't that the case?
Well, there is that opportunity at one point, but you have to understand, if the superintendent is part of the process and he has members, and he himself could be one of the co-chairs, or he could appoint somebody, it's kind of hard for me to believe that it's going to get to the point where the standards are going to need to be revised so dramatically. There's a process of experts in place and input and hearings along the way that, yes, if it came back to the committee of the Joint Committee for the Review of Administrative Rules and it was dramatically different from what the experts that created the standards came up with, yeah, we might. But why would the superintendent get to that point? He's very much a part of the process of creating them, so it's hard for me to believe that he would depart so greatly.
You wouldn't see the possibility of pretty serious divisions on the board where you have Superintendent Evers and his appointees and the governor and his appointees. I mean, isn't there the potential for people to have drastically different thinking about the way we should go forward?
That's always a possibility, but I hope that with the intent that we're really trying to get experts not only in curriculum, but educators at different levels, parental involvement, that you're going to have the best interests of the state of Wisconsin in mind. And I think that this is a type of process that has been used elsewhere, and we think that this is the best approach to go. And again, keeping in mind that the whole goal all along is to make sure that there is some public input, which we did not have with Common Core, and that there is some opportunity for the legislature to have oversight.
One of the things the superintendent has said, this is going to cost districts. This is going to cost a lot of money because we're essentially starting over. What do you say to that?
Well, one of the biggest cost drivers in something like this is setting up the infrastructure for the assessment, which means technology, computer technology. And, that is something that many districts are going to be using no matter what. And to beyond that, I would say, if you know that the foundation that you're building has a flaw in it, then would you really be wise to continue building upon that foundation? I think it would be in our best interest that we need to start from a position where we have research-based ideas that have been thought out by experts in the field.
All right, we're going to have to hold it there, but I appreciate your time, Senator Leah Vukmir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, the other side of the debate over state academic standards, School Superintendent Tony Evers on why he says we shouldn't change course from the Common Core. That's when Upfront.